What's going on YouTube? It's Ty, better known as MidwestReefer, and I'm back with another video. Today, I'm going to be talking about dosing and do you need to. So starting off in this reef hobby, I started doing research about 2 years ago. My tank is now a year old, as you guys seen in the last video. And when I first started doing research on YouTube and doing research on the forums, you know, I do Reef to Reef, so shout out to them. That's the form that I do, and I think a lot of people do. A lot of people are talking about full-size tanks in the beginning. I think in the last few years, nano tanks have gotten pretty popular. I know they were kind of frowned upon on some of the old school reefers, but a lot of the information that I was finding initially was for large size tanks. So I'm taking all the information in that I can, not understanding that not everything will correlate. Things will vary depending on your tank size. So keep that in mind. And one of the things that do vary, or one of the things that does vary, is going to be dosing. And what you do need to, and what you're going to need to dose in your tank. So there's a lot of different obstacles and a lot of different things in this hobby that can deter a new reefer from setting up his first tank or setting up her first tank, and dosing is one of them. So the first thing is, you think you can get the water, right? Get the water. Where do I get the water? Oh, I got to make the water. Does my local fish store sell the water? You got to figure that out, right? Then the next thing is, you know, what kind of equipment do I need? Is this power head good enough? Is this power head not good enough? Is this heater good enough? Is this heater not good enough? So you already have all that stuff you got to deal with. And then you got to learn the nitrogen cycle, right? And that's fun, which is not really too hard. It's basic. It's like basic chemistry. And the kits do most of the work for you, right? And obviously, if you get a decent, reputable one, you can read the tank a little bit better than some of the cheaper test kits. And that nitrogen cycle is pretty standard for every type of aquarium, freshwater or saltwater. So that's something that you kind of always need to know anyway. But then, you know, you learn about the gravity and the salinity, and hopefully most of you guys are using refractometers and not hydrometers, but I know some people still use those hydrometers and like those. So, but then you get all that testing out of the way. So you get over that, you're like, you know what, I will start doing this. And then you hear like, hey, if you want to keep LPS corals with exoskeletons, and if you want to keep shrimp, you need to make sure that you have enough calcium in your tank, because they need the calcium to build their shells, and they need the calcium to build their exoskeletons. So you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Do I have calcium? Do I need to buy a tester? Do I need to test for calcium now? Do I need to test for, do I need to get more, do I need more alkalinity in the water? And you start freaking out and you're thinking, I need to go buy a whole other test kit. I need to start getting a doser. Do I dose by hand? Do I get an automatic doser? These are all the things that went through my head. And it kept me from getting shrimp for a very long time too in the beginning stages, because I was like, well, they're not going to have the calcium that they need. They're not going to be able to shed, and they're going to grow inside their shells and die. And I don't know if my corals, they're going to have brittle exoskeletons, you know, because I like a lot of the LPS corals, like the hammers and the frog spawns, and of course they do need calcium. And pretty much, instead of finding information about if I need to dose, most people just showed me what to dose for, what dosers to use, but nobody really said like, hey, nano tanks don't really need that. So what I mean by nano tanks don't really need that is, if you treat this tank as a 13.5 tank, or a different nano tank as a 10-gallon tank, a 20-gallon tank, and stock it according, then you're not probably going to need a dose for your tank. What I mean is, when you export and do your water change, you take out a lot of bad nutrients, but a lot of people that are new to reefing don't understand that when you do a new water change, a lot of those nutrients come back into the tank as well, if you do a substantial enough water change. Now, they say the minimum for this tank is a 10% water change, which is about 1.5 gallons. The tank only holds about 10 gallons of water. If you do like the pound of rock per gallon, and then you have your pump and everything in there, it'll probably only hold around 10 gallons, maybe 11 gallons after the water displacement. And I do a 50% water change, or about 5 gallons every week, because I don't have a protein skimmer. And this just helps me keep the nitrates low, and also just keep like a lot of detritus and stuff out of the tank. But this also gives me more nutrients back into the tank. And touching back on something I said a moment ago, is if you stock the tank according to its size, you shouldn't need a dose, which means if you're not filling this thing to the brim with coral and shrimp and any other vertebrates that need additional nutrients, you're not going to over exhaust those nutrients. However, if you do fill it up to every inch of the tank and the whole rock and everything is with corals, the more that is in there, the more nutrients they'll need to use, and the more nutrients they'll compete for, right? Because they're all using a lot of the same nutrients. So if you overstock your tank with coral, or like shrimp or any other invertebrate that needs, like calcium and different things that you can add to your tank, then that's the results you're going to get. And yeah, you are going to need to dose your tank. That's just plain and simple. But these tanks are small enough and the volume is small enough that normally the water changes are going to get it done. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that some of you guys, don't have different water, or maybe the salts that you guys are using have less of a nutrients than other salts out there on the market. But one thing you need to understand is don't add anything to your tank unless you can test for it. So just don't go buy these dosing agents and start dosing your tank weekly or whatever without knowing if you need it. Because you ever heard of too much of something can be a bad thing as well? Overdosing, right? Overdosing on drugs, alcohol, food, anything can be a bad thing if you take too much. So don't dose your tank unless you need it. But chances are, if you keep your tank moderately stocked, and you don't have to keep the exact amount of corals that I have, I've just been lazy on buying new coral, then you'll be fine. Just do a larger water change, and 9 times out of 10, you're probably not going to need to dose a tank this size. The fish don't really need it, right? They just need the nitrates low. They need to make sure that the salinity is on point and the temperature is on point. If you start seeing problems with your coral where it looks like they're not growing, if they're not showing good coloration, all my corals are doing fine, as you can see, then the things to check for first is going to be salinity. For one, some of these corals are very sensitive to massive water changes, so your salinity shouldn't be swinging too much at all. I keep mine right at 0.25, maybe 0.26, but I always bring it back with some RO water. And then also you want to check your temperature, because temperature swings can white out corals as well, and keep them from coming out. And then obviously the lighting. If the lighting isn't adequate enough, you're going to have bad coloration as well as bad growth. A lot of these are photosynthetic, so they use the light essentially to grow. You can feed them too, but most of them will just use the light to grow. So if their food source is weak, like the light, then you're going to have some deterioration in your corals as well. So check those 3 things first before you start worrying about dosing your tank. And hopefully this was something that can put some of you new reefers at ease. If this is something that you've also came across where you freaked out at the beginning thinking that you're gonna have to start dosing your little nano tank as well. And if there's anything I forgot or anything that I may have misspoke, definitely let me know down in the comments, because I'm still learning every single day. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.